Hey everyone, it's the Kung Fu Genius, and I'm here with one of those special videos that I do from time to time, which is not like a normal podcast episode. It's just when something happens or there's a little bit of news and someone wants me to talk about it, I'll sometimes make a shorter video like this. We're in for a doozy here. Let's get to it.
He is unstoppable, unbeatable, unbelievable. He's Alex Richter, the Kung Fu Genius.
And every day, I practice martial arts.
Okay, so if you've been living under a rock for the last couple of weeks and you have not heard the news about the whole Sifu Kern and European Wing Chun organization and the Hungarian Association, and of course from a few months back, the untimely passing of Sifu Kern, well, this video is probably not for you. I generally don't comment on like hot button political stuff. I usually wait, especially within like my own family. I wait until the stuff gets a little old. I'll talk about old politics from back in the day, but I generally don't like to talk about stuff that's currently going on because people get pissy and they get angry. I left the Learning organization about 14 years ago and was the best decision I ever made. Never looked back. I'm getting a constant influx of text and Instagram and Facebook messages from people who want me like, hey, what's going on or whatever. And I figured I would just make a short video and kind of recap what's going on from my perspective. And for my more honest, let's say unfiltered opinion, I'll leave those videos for Patreon and YouTube members. But here's my kind of public statement on what's going on, at least as far as I see it, which means it's just my opinion. It's just my perspective. Take it for what it is. Do your own research. Don't get pissed off at me. If you don't like how I say things, well, then watch the video. So not everything that I'm going to talk about here will make total sense to people who are not part of the Learning organization or were never part of a WT, Wing Chun, Learning derivative or whatever. If you weren't part of that, some of this stuff might not make sense. This is probably a video that's really geared towards people who are either once in WT, currently in WT, or whatever. So I apologize for you guys coming from the other styles. This might not be the video for you. But if you still find this stuff somewhat interesting and you support me on Patreon and YouTube, shameless plug, I'll do 2 more videos. One where I describe the history, the long sordid history between the EWTO and the Hungarian organization and Sifu Kern and how one big family was still partitioned in different segments. And then I'll do a 3rd video, which is just kind of my take on what's going on and some things that may come off as somewhat culty behavior. And I'll talk about that stuff, but I'm only going to do that for our supporters because I'm not going to share that opinion publicly. And because I know this video is probably going to be watched mostly by WT people, it doesn't matter to me what side you fall on, if you're partial to Sifu Kern or to the EWTO or to Hungary or you're somewhere in between or whatever. That's totally fine. I'm just going to give some information out here. There's no need to get upset. If you listen to everything I say and you disagree with it, I'm okay with that. You don't have to agree with me just because I parked the camera in front of me and spoke. You're allowed to have your own opinion, which your Wing Chun association might not allow you to have. But I'll let you have your own opinion. It's okay. You're in a safe place. Relationships are complicated. There is no black and white. There's fault on both sides and there's BS on both sides and there's stuff going on. That's obvious. There is no, these people are right, these people are wrong. There is just the situation as it is. You can take the facts and make your own decisions. Now, although the Wing Chun that I teach in New York is on the Hong Kong side of things, because there is a little differences between Hong Kong and European Wing Chun and Hungarian Wing Chun and all that. The style that I teach is definitely more Hong Kong, so I'm like more partial to the Chinese way of doing things, but I had a close relationship with the European Wing Chun organization, so I also understand their perspective both on Wing Chun and in their relationship with Sifu Kern. So take that for what it is. To say that I'm unbiased would not be true, but if I had to put money on this and bets, I'm guessing you probably also have your own opinions on this too, so you might also be somewhat biased. Which is fine as long as you accept it and you know that that's true, but to pretend that you are some type of objective arbiter, especially if you are directly involved or you are part of one of these organizations, or especially if you're told what you're supposed to say on Facebook publicly, you might have a bias that's not even your choice. So suffice it to say, Sifu Kern and his largest international representative of his brand of Wing Chun, the EWTO, the European Wing Chun organization. They've had a rocky relationship from the beginning. I think most people who know anything about it at least know that. Some people who are just care about the Kung Fu might not know or might not care, but for people who've been around for a while, yet they've had kind of a salty relationship or kind of a somewhat contentious relationship since the beginning in 1976, and they've had their ups and downs. Everyone has their ups and downs. It's normal relationship stuff. But the EWTO thing is nothing new. This is not a new conflict that suddenly arose. This has been stuff that's been brewing pretty much since day one. Now, I've been lucky enough to be a fly on the wall for conversations when people at a much higher pay grade than myself were discussing these things, and I could sit back and I can listen to their perspectives. And I've had direct conversations with all the major players at some point. Way back in the day, I talked to Sifu Kern about the various politics and the issues with the European Wing Chun organization and with his other students. I've talked to Sifu Kern about these things, and I've talked to all sorts of people in between. So I've been lucky enough to get both sides of the perspective. And I've also got a lot of input from former members and current members of the Hungarian Wing Chun organization as to what's going on over there. So I consider my position somewhat unique in that I get to hear a little bit from everyone. So I'm not privy to all the information. Obviously, I left the association a very long time ago. But as someone who was involved and did have those conversations, I can give a little bit of perspective, but I don't know everything that's going on, and I'm going to guess you probably don't either. Which might mean you should probably reserve judgments on exactly what you think is going on. As I do, I'm just giving my perspective. But in terms of what the long-term ramifications are for this, no one knows. I suspect, like all news, we say in New York that, whatever bad news happened today, that newspaper is going to be wrapping fish tomorrow. So at some point, it's going to be a big nothing burger, but it's definitely changing the shape of how WT is going to progress further in Europe in the future. So there are some ramifications, but I think in the general world, it's a bit of a nothing burger. So because I just want to talk about this particular incident that happened this month, January 2025, by the way, for those of you who are watching this 50 years in the future. So back in November 2024, just a few months ago, my Sifu Kern passed away very suddenly. He was obviously the leader of the European Wing Chun organization. And so obviously his death is a big reason why all of this stuff has kind of come to pass in recent weeks. I know that at the time of my Sifu's death, he had actually planned to visit Beijing because there was a representative of Sifu Learning in Beijing who, well, I don't know all the details, but from what I understood, was not too happy with the Learning organization. Now, that's nothing new. A lot of people, especially those in China and in Hong Kong who had run schools under Sifu Learning, had issues. In fact, the success of Learning Wing Chun in mainland China and in Hong Kong has not matched the success of Learning Wing Chun in other countries. Now, there's for sure reasons for that, but that's beyond the scope of this video. Suffice it to say, this Beijing representative of Sifu Learning was not entirely thrilled with what was going on in the association. He seemed to be a bit of a fan of what Sifu was doing with his style of Qisao and his style of teaching, so he wanted to invite him to come over and teach him, and so that was already in the works before Sifu passed away. Now, there's another issue about this whole territorial rights because Sifu Learning's organization is divided into territories and instructors are not supposed to teach in other territories. So that's a whole other can of worms. And those are the kind of things that I'll be talking about in the member-only videos because otherwise this video is going to be 8 hours long. So anyway, Sifu Learning took this visit from these European instructors to Beijing as a breach of his territorial rights. And now he finally had the reason to officially separate himself from the EWTO, who was a bit of a thorn in his side. But while Sifu Kern was alive, even though he did not have much of an interaction with the EWTO since around 2008, more about that in the other videos, they were still paying him a monthly fee and they were still representing him, even if in name only. But after Sifu Kern passed away, it's my speculation, of course, I'm not a fly on the wall for this, that they may have stopped paying Sifu Learning, and maybe that's the reason why he had to come up with something else. Either he felt that he could make more money with his Hungarian representative trying to take over Western Europe, or maybe getting some old former members to come back to him, or he was just salty because he wasn't getting any money anymore, or something in between. I don't know those facts, so I cannot tell you for sure. But as is often the case with Sifu Learning, when he makes these proclamations, he doesn't do them directly. He always kind of goes around the bend a little bit. It's not the statement you would think it should be, He did not openly say the EWTO is cut off or the EWTO is not this or whatever. He made a slick little move. I mean, he thinks it's slick. It's kind of obvious what he's doing, that the EWTO was no longer allowed to issue certificates that would be recognized by the IWTA headquarters, i.e. not recognized by Sifu Leungting, and then said that only his Hungarian representative would be able to issue certificates that would be recognized by the mother organization. He does this kind of like indirect thing with the certificates because he also doesn't want to completely alienate the base of the EWTO and say they're all not qualified anymore. He wants to poach those guys, and it's quite obvious. The problem with this weird proclamation is that the EWTO stopped issuing certificates that came from Sifu Leungting in 2008. Now, they reformed the company at that time. That whole history I'll talk about in those other member-only videos. But since about 17 years, the EWTO, while representing Sifu Leungting, has issued their own certificates for students, for instructors, and so on and so forth. So it seems almost like Sifu Leungting just got the memo and then decided, no, I'm the one who's disqualifying them, but they have stopped. 17 years ago, that's nearly 2 decades, issuing certificates that even had Sifu Leungting's name on it, from what I understand. And this is, of course, my opinion, so take it for what it is. 20 years ago, this would have been the biggest news. When Sifu Emin Boztepe left the association in 2001, it was huge news because he was like the big star of the EWTO. He left, there was statements back and forth, it was in the magazines, and people were litigating this online, and it took a few years for that to kind of die down. This news of Sifu Leungting and his largest representative essentially becoming officially estranged from each other should be orders of magnitude bigger than that, and it's basically crickets chirping on this stuff. It's just so much less relevant now than it used to be. And especially within WT, you have so many schools that have broken off from the main association, including mine, that you have a lot of alternatives now. If someone is really hell-bent on learning Sifu Leungting's style of Wing Chun, there are tons of former students who have gone out, done their own thing, and they teach it with a style of instruction that is based on improving the students. We want to create a program where the students feel empowered, and it's all about them using Wing Chun as a vehicle to improve themselves, whether it's to learn to fight or to defend themselves, or it's a cool hobby they want to do, or it's just something to do when they get out of work after 8 hours working for a boss they don't like. The martial art and the school and the atmosphere is about the students. And one thing is painfully clear from all of these statements, especially the ones coming from the Hong Kong side, is that for them, it's about their brand, about being classical and authentic and the real one and all this kind of stuff, which then begs the question, so you've been teaching now for 50 plus years, and you have had nobody learn in your association who left, who's qualified to teach? The IWTA cannot have their cake and eat it too. You cannot say that your teaching system is so great, so perfect, so authentic, so high quality, such a high standard, but yet if anyone who learned your program leaves for any reason, suddenly they don't know anything and they're not qualified. So one must ask the question, is your program good, or is it only good when they're paying you membership fees? You cannot be the best Wing Chun instruction, but then suddenly someone stops paying you fees and they're completely disqualified. Is the program good? Is the teaching system of a high standard and quality, or is it not? Constantly saying people who left you are not qualified to teach is not a good sign for the quality of your association. Now, I'm not saying that if someone leaves, the IWTA has to say, well, that person's still good, they learned from us, they're just not part of our association. I'm not expecting that. But it's going on the attack against former members that kind of leaves one's head scratching. And when Sifu Leungting himself has had opinions about masters in his own association that he himself gave high ranking to, suddenly that guy doesn't know anything, that guy's not good, that guy didn't really learn this. Well, who is the person who looks bad when he says that? If I issue you a certificate saying you learned this from me or you can do it, only a few years later to say you totally suck and you don't know anything, who's the liar? If a martial arts school or a martial arts association does not prioritize its students and its members, i.e. in any other context, the customers, run away. They're making it about them and not about you. Martial arts is about your personal journey, and you have a choice where you want to make this personal journey. with Wing Chun, with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, with whatever. And when you go to Wing Chun, you find the Wing Chun school or organization that's going to satisfy those things that you need. But if they're just talking about them and their authority, all right, the argument from authority is quite literally a logical fallacy. To say that they're right because they are the person who's right is a circular argument, literally a logical fallacy. You go to a school, you like the instruction, you go there, you feel comfortable. That's where you should be. It shouldn't be about who they are. It should be like the Janet Jackson song, "What Have You Done For Me Lately?" I know it's a dated reference, sorry about that. So to wrap things up, the EWTO countered Sifu Kern's proclamation with their own statement. The EWTO thanked Sifu Kern for his contributions and said, we appreciate what you've done for us. But then they also gently reminded him that they have not been issuing certificates from him since 2008. So again, it's this very awkward, did Sifu Kern not get the memo? He got the memo. He's just pretending that it wasn't so. The reason I know he got the memo is because I was still in the association in 2008 and had conversations with him about this. The EWTO also said something in that statement, which I think is quite powerful and true. And they said that they recognize the individual associations, the independent Wing Chun associations. They recognize their rights to issue their own certificates. These certificates that are issued within a school or an association are based on the standards of that school or that association. And that is up to those individual associations to establish those standards. And the idea that in a martial art that Sifu Kern has been teaching since the late 60s and perhaps internationally since the 70s, that there's still only one person who can issue a certificate is to admit that they've never taught anyone who's any good in all of that time. And if that's their admission, well, why would you be with an association that openly admits that? Do you think it would be any different for you when you leave Kern's organization, that they're not going to say the same things about you? If you really believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I would like to sell you. But you got to pay for it now because it's not going to stay around long. And then the IWTA, never satisfied without getting the last word, countered with their own counter. And that is when we started to see a blitz of communist Eastern European bloc style propaganda, the likes of which I think would make even the most solid dictator blush. They have literally posted videos of Hungarian students clapping, looking like North Korean hostages, having to clap for dear leader because he walks in. Now, I'm not gonna clown anyone for being excited to see their grandmaster or whatever, but to post a video like everyone is clapping, oh, look at him, he's the big emperor. I think what the IWTA is missing is how this comes off to outsiders who are watching this, because one must always ask, who are they making these videos for? If you're a former WT member like me, I look at that stuff and go, geez, that's kind of weird, and that reminds me of why maybe I made a good decision not being there. And if you're not a WT person or you're from another Wing Chun style, what would you think? If you're a WT person in the association, all right, what would you think about videos of Sifu of another style walking in and everyone jumping up, clapping, and everyone talking about how loyal they are to this person? You'd probably wonder, why all the public proclamations of loyalty? Loyalty is an action. You're loyal by putting in the work. You're not loyal by showing it to other people, by writing the correct comments on Facebook so the other people in your association can read it and know that you're part of them. Always be very, very weary of public proclamations of loyalty. Because if you're really loyal, you don't need to do that. One must ask, who are these videos for? This, for any outsider, even a former insider like me, is peak cringe. And this is not going to get a bunch of outsiders to suddenly flock to their association. Hey, let's do Wing Chun, where everyone is clapping for this guy. Is that why people are there? Remember, it's about what they do for you. It's not about the adulation of them. They want position and authority and adulation. Martial arts is about the journey, not about adulation. We respect our teachers. We have a good relationship with our instructors, but this does not have to rise to the level of weird, fanatical, propagandist nonsense. And it goes so far that even current members of the Hungarian WT Association are messaging me like, what's going on? This is a weird look. And by the way, they're not allowed to message me because the Hungarian leader doesn't allow any of his members in his association to openly chat or privately chat with people who are former members like me That's the kind of control they have. They don't let you be Facebook friends, or they discourage this kind of stuff. That's cult behavior. And if you're in an association where the leader says who you're allowed to be friends with or follow on Instagram, run. It would have been way easier if Sifu Leungting just said, hey, now that Sifu Kern has passed away, there's going to be a guard change. This is what we're going to do, and just change it and move on. But these videos and the way they're doing it is just a bad look. I hope the IWTA changes course. I'm not looking for them to fall apart or to fail. There are enough people in the world that if every Wing Chun association wants to do well and prosper, they can. There's a scarcity mindset. If you are a Wing Chun school with 10 students, well, those are 10 students you took away from me. It's not the case. If your school or your association does not have enough students, it's not the other school's fault. It's your fault. And WT associations have to stop blaming other schools and competing schools for their failure or lack of success. And that's all I'm going to say about that.